Hello, Bonita. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. If you could introduce yourself.
Oh, hi Claire. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Bonita Norris.
Thank you. And yeah, where are you from? Tell us a little bit about you because you have a very interesting background.
I'm from Wokingham. I currently live in Ascot, but that doesn't tell you anything about my background at all because there are no mountains in either of those towns. I'm a climber, and I used to climb some of the world's highest mountains like Everest, and I've tried to climb K2. So I've been really lucky to go on expeditions to some of the world's highest peaks.
Fascinating. What got you into that? Was it just an interest when you were younger?
No, actually, again, really roundabout way of becoming a mountaineer. I was at university, I was about 20 years old, and I went to a lecture about mountaineering. And I listened as these two climbers talked about how they just climbed Everest. And when they got to the top of Everest, they could see the curvature of the earth beneath them. And for whatever reason, that just lit my soul on fire. I thought it was the most amazing thing. And so from that is when I started climbing, and 2 years later, I reached the top of Everest.
Stop it. Oh my goodness, that's so quick.
It was, yeah, and I was 22 when I climbed Everest, so it was a real whirlwind. Just that sort of young determination.
Weren't you the youngest British woman? Is that right?
I was, yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy, isn't it? So what an accomplishment. I bet you get asked about that all the time.
I do, and it's really part of my everyday work because now I'm a,
Yeah.
a speaker, a professional speaker, and I share that story on stage day in day out. So it's still very, it feels like it happened yesterday, but actually it's like 15 years ago now, which is
And
crazy.
how full circle though, now that you're going and you're speaking about it and probably inspiring so many other people to go and do the same thing.
Yeah, it was. And in fact, I've actually been back to that same lecture theatre where I got inspired to start
Oh, wow.
climbing. And it was to celebrate women on Everest. And I was just sat in the audience, just enjoying the show. And then they said to us, if there's any women in the room that have climbed Everest, can you stand up? And so there was this really lovely full circle moment of like, wow, if me, little me at
Yeah.
20 had known that I'd one day be in that room, being, standing up when that question was asked, it would be amazing. So it was a real full circle moment. Yeah.
Wow, that really is. How amazing. And so obviously you're here to share your birth story, which is, yeah, birth is a whole different type of mountain, right? To climb
Yeah.
and prepare for. So really interesting to hear how your birth went and how you prepared for that. I'm sure you probably just your mindset must be incredibly strong anyway because of everything you've achieved and done. Like that is obviously climbing Everest, getting to the top of Everest is probably much a mind game as it is a physical game, right? So how, in terms of birth, like when you found out you were pregnant, your preparation, you went down the hypnobirthing route. How come you chose to go down that route? And I guess how does your own background play into the preparation you did for birth?
Oh, my background as a climber massively influenced how I gave birth. So I ended up having two home births,
Yeah.
hypnobirthed as well. And yeah, all of that was based in what I'd learned in the mountains. I'm not even sure I could have done the two home births had I not had my previous experiences. So
Yeah.
I was really grateful for the mountains and what they taught me to take into that. So how did I find out about hypnobirthing? Well, actually, when I first met my husband and he said, would you like to have kids one day? I said, yes, I would, but I would like to have a cesarean if I ever have children. I just want a cesarean because I think the climber's mentality is to only take very intentional risks.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
it's not about just like winging it and seeing how it goes. It's
Yeah.
like if you can reduce the risk of something dangerous in any way, then that's what we do. But what happened was a friend of mine who'd had a hypnobirth herself, she just one day like casually pushed a book over across the table to me and said, I think you should read this. And it was called Hypnobirthing or something like that.
Yeah.
Can't remember. And I read it cover to cover whilst I was on a climbing trip at about 3 months pregnant. I felt so sick I couldn't climb myself. My husband was climbing
Oh.
above me. I finished this book in one sitting. I shut the book and I shouted up to him, we're going to have a home birth.
Quite the difference.
It was like, that's a bit of a 180. And it just reading that book sort of sparked in me that everything I had learned about breath, about mind and body, about being able to stay calm when you feel like you might want to panic. Everything I'd learned in the mountains, I was like, why would I not try this. And there's something really elemental about climbing, and it's the same with birth. And I wanted that experience. So yeah, thanks to my friend, we were on the hypnobirth journey from there.
Amazing. It is so, like when I talk about hypnobirthing with people, it's very based in like sports science, like the theories behind it, behind the mind-body connection, and utilizing the mind to affect how the body then behaves, which happens a lot in sports and in extreme activities and things like that. So yeah, I can see why once you know a little bit more about it, it would appeal to somebody like yourself. So you were planning a home birth right from the beginning. So total 180 home birth. Tell us how that went.
So I'm so lucky. I had the most amazing, my husband is amazing. And he just was on board. He was like, if that's what you think, he read about it and he took charge of the pool and getting all of that sorted. So, we had this kind of very clear distinction in our roles. It was like, all I have to do is prepare to give birth and he has to do everything else, which was great. So I'm so lucky that I had that support. I think that was so important. And I just think, partners, like, you can never underestimate the role that they can play, even though they're not giving birth. Like, my God, I couldn't have done it without him. So then we bought an online course, which was really great because we could watch it in the evenings, even when we were tired. Some of the videos were like 5 minutes long. And then we went on a few actual in-person hypnobirthing courses. I listened to hypnobirthing podcasts. I mean, this is just very me. I got completely and utterly obsessed. And but things like I'd got my yoga teaching qualification, and so there was a lot there about breath work and stuff like that, which I loved and made sense to me. So really, leading up to my first baby, I was very lucky. In my first trimester, I was feeling very sick and very exhausted, but the rest of my pregnancy, I was lucky. I was healthy. I was able to exercise pretty much right up until the last minute. Not exercise, but like by the end of doing a bit of stretching and stuff like that. And so, I was just really lucky to just absorb myself completely in that world. But my family were really against me having a home birth. Especially like my mum. She was like, just have the first baby at hospital. It's such an unknown. But in our lineage, or especially the mothers in the family, my mum was I was the only baby in my whole sort of maternal line that had ever been born in a hospital. Like, my mum was born at home and her mum was born at home. So my mum had me in a hospital and she felt very strongly that I should do the same. But looking at my lineage, I was thinking, well, if all of my mothers in the past have given birth well at home, then I feel like if there'd been some really tricky births in the family history, maybe I might be a bit more, but I had that. So that gave me confidence. And I just said to myself and my husband, like, this is a really like strong goal, loosely held. I think the normal,
I like that.
strong opinions, loosely held, but in this, it's like, we're going to throw everything at it. But if I get into labor and it's not working, it's no biggie. We'll just go to hospital. And I was really lucky in the sense that I lived in London. We had 2 hospitals 10 minutes away, 2 fantastic birth centres as well. So if anything would have gone wrong, then we would have been straight in an ambulance. So there was the location that was like a good tick. There was like my maternal sort of line of birth was all a good tick. So I was thinking, well, I've got all that going. Like, I feel like, yes, it's a complete unknown, but so and then the last thing was, I just said to my mum, I will just stay at home and labor at home until it's time to go to hospital.
Okay.
And I think that really sort of allowed her to think, okay, like, this is fine. And that for me was also really helpful. It's just this idea, and for my husband, that I'm going to stay at home until we have to go in. And if that moment never comes, that's okay. And
that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, that was my mentality. I wasn't fixated on it, as part of my identity, or like really wanting to. It was just, I believe it's possible. And I think it's safe to do so, given our circumstances near hospitals. And like, let's just see how far we can get. And I think that mixture of being prepared but also not having much pressure was really important, obviously, because it was such an
Yeah.
unknown. And then the birth, was great, and we had a home birth. It was crazy, harder than climbing Everest, but
That's
well,
also, I was going to say, like, isn't it so interesting that the narrative around birth is so, like, the fact that birth is dangerous and scary is so strong that
mm,
your mum, based on everything that you do and have done in your life, was still very worried for you for
mm,
arranging a home birth. Like, it just shows how that society view of birth is, that it is this really dangerous thing. Because actually, and I'm sure as you did, when you look at the statistics around it and you look at home birth and the procedures around it, it's actually incredibly safe. But we still sort of hold this very outdated view that it's really dangerous. So it was just really interesting to me, just because of your background and your history.
yeah, of course. And she was not happy about me climbing mountains
No,
either.
I'm sure.
I think she's like my long-suffering mother, that no matter what comes to me in life, I've got to do it the hard way. I've got to do it the
Yeah.
dangerous way, or the seemingly dangerous way. But it was the same with Everest and with all the mountains I've climbed. I felt like I prepared as much as I could, but also I wasn't. I was just saying, I'm just going to go to the mountain and see how far we can get, and if we have to turn around, it's okay. Like no birth is worth something going wrong for,
Yeah.
and no mountain is worth something going wrong for. So I very much, you have to separate yourself from the outcome you want. For me
Yeah.
anyway, that's what works. And yeah, so I think I sort of won her around on that, but she was, I think she was just like, oh, there's not
Yeah.
again, not again.
What next? What next?
So,
I
um
think that's a good way of looking at it is, like you said, separating yourself from the outcome. So if you do that, your approach is just very pragmatic and very like, okay, we look at the facts at every turn. And if something doesn't feel right or it feels unsafe or I just don't feel comfortable, then we can change the plan and we can move. And I think that's quite a good way to look at it and to just look at it from, yeah, that kind of pragmatic, what's happening in this exact moment
Of
situation.
course. I mean, and the idea of a lovely home birth, it's so beautiful and so romantic. But as we know, for so many women, completely out of their control, they
Yeah.
do need to go to hospital. And so I think you need to really prepare yourself for the fact
Yeah.
that in some ways I was like preparing myself. It will go to hospital, but we'll just stay at home as long as we can.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, because when that moment does come, and it's the same for me in the mountains, haven't got to the top of a lot of mountains. Not gotten the outcome I wanted. But so being less attached to that outcome and knowing what the most important thing is, which is coming down the mountain safe and coming out of the birth experience safe. That making sure those priorities were the most
Yeah.
important thing. Yeah.
So tell us how the birth ended up going then, and then your second as well.
Yeah, so I think I was in labour. So my daughter now, she's 7 years old. She's called Lily. We
Oh,
didn't know what we were having, whether it's a girl or a boy. It was a surprise, and it was over Christmas. So she was due on the 26th on Boxing Day. I started getting contractions around kind of the day before New Year's Eve, and she was born on the 2nd of January. So I had a
oh,
couple of nights of like no sleep, because every 15 minutes it was like another one, calling the midwife, like everything. My husband's getting the birth pool ready,
yeah,
only for it to then go away. And then that would repeat itself night after night. So by the time we got to the actual labour, I was really quite tired, if I'm honest.
yeah,
And I wasn't actually massively prepared for that preamble, to be so,
yeah. That
because
can
it's
be
hard
hard.
anyway when you're 9 months pregnant and you need to
Yeah,
pee every 20 minutes. But
yeah,
that with the contractions. And I do remember on New Year's Eve, just in bed, like, hands on the kind of bed head, just kind of laboring away, and all the fireworks going off. My
oh
husband was
wow.
next to me, and I thought, this is it. She's going to come on New Year's Eve, and she didn't. She done again. So finally, when it did come around, it was like the same pattern as always in the evening, but it just ramped up straight away. And I'd like lost my plug that afternoon.
Yeah,
So the midwife knew. She was like, the baby is coming tonight.
yeah.
I got, after sort of going in the shower for about 2 hours. I don't know what the water bill would have been for that, but it was just having the water on my back really, really helped. I had quite bad, this was, again, not what I'd read much about, but the pain for me of the contractions was in my back rather than in
Mm,
my tummy. And so I was like, okay, well, that was unexpected. And now I've got to deal with a different pain to what I was expecting.
yeah.
Um, but with the hypnobirthing, it's incredible what you can do, like through those kind of sensations. And I had one particular tip which has helped me, not just, I've actually taken it into the mountains, this tip that I learned from hypnobirthing, but it's the traffic light system of, if you can go up, if you find yourself in red because you're getting panting and you're feeling a bit out of control with what's going on, try and calm yourself down and bring yourself back through amber into green
Mm.
between those contractions. And so between contractions, I was thinking like, come back to green, and everything seemed to be going like perfect textbook, apart from it was just my back that really, really
Yeah.
hurt. I couldn't lie down for to be checked by the midwife. I was quite pleased by that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Then yeah, got in the pool, and it was just, I had like the doldrums for about 2 or 3 hours where like nothing happened. And then eventually, I don't know what was that, a transition phase that just went on for a really long
It
time.
could have been. It could have been. Or it could have been. Yeah, I mean, the body's so clever. Like sometimes it just gives itself a little break. And I think the reason we question it is because the medical model would have us believe that it should continue in this pattern that they expect. But actually, our bodies are so much more nuanced than that. So sometimes they just pause for a little bit. And actually, the fact that you're at home allowed you to do that. If you had been probably in a hospital and everything kind of stopped for a while, they probably would have been getting a little bit twitchy and
Yeah,
wanting to start it up again.
yeah.
Mm.
Oh, absolutely. So I think the reason that I went into that was because I had not slept at that point for days, and
Yeah,
my body just knew that it needed to gather some energy, maybe.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was just quite happy in the pool. I was like, basically having this occasional contractions, and then suddenly I can't, it was an out of body experience by this point, mainly from the sleep deprivation. By about 5 or 6 in the morning, I started needing to push, and it was a long time pushing. And yeah, she came out in the pool, and I picked her up
oh,
myself, and couldn't believe it was like, finally, after like 3 days
oh,
of what felt like labor, she was finally there, and it was absolutely beautiful. And but in terms of just what it required, I really kind of tried to keep fit and train, and the mindset and everything for the birth. But
yeah,
people ask me, was it as hard as climbing Everest? And I think, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
In
yeah,
terms of the stakes, what was at stake,
yeah,
and when you're climbing a mountain, you can turn around at any time and go, this isn't for me. When you're midway through birth, like, there's only one way this baby is coming out somehow.
yeah,
And like, no way that baby comes out is an easy way, whether you have a
yeah.
cesarean or a natural birth. It's like, it's really intense. So you can't just get off the train and turn around. It's
No.
there's it's so full on. And I've never had more respect for women in my whole life than when that baby was born. Yeah.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? You see, like I attend births as a doula, and one minute the baby's not there, it's inside, and the next minute it's there. It will just never cease to amaze me that that baby just came out of that person. And like, I think my brain can't still quite compute it, even though I've seen it with my own eyes. I still think I struggle to actually understand what has just happened because it is so wild. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is so beautiful. So beautiful. And I'd watched so many birth videos on like social media, and I had cried at all of them. But when my own baby was in my
Yeah.
arms, I was just so like, I don't know, shocked, and just
Yeah.
in the moment, I didn't really have that kind of reaction with either of the births.
Mm.
So yeah, but it was amazing. My husband was like blubbing his eyes out, and
Ah,
it was really, for a first baby, I think my body was going, we've got to do this thing that we've never done before, and it took a while, but the second baby was like
Yes.
the opposite. It was like,
No, it knew what it was doing by the second baby. So what is the gap between your two?
so there's 4.5 years
Oh,
between
okay.
them. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
quite a gap.
Yeah.
The second one was a surprise, so,
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
which we were very lucky, and he's like the best
Yeah.
thing ever. But
Yeah.
yeah, that birth was very different. Again, didn't really have the time being a mum at this point to
Yeah.
do the whole like hypnobirthing, but we did recap, and it on the videos and things, and I, again, my social media was just full of people giving birth. It
Yeah.
knows that you're
It
pregnant.
does know.
So I got as much as I could have done, and Wilf, he was 12 days late. So my midwives at this point were saying, after like a week late, they were saying you should probably just go into the hospital every day and just get some
Okay.
monitoring, just go and
Yeah.
get monitored. So I went in for a few days in a row doing that. And so on the 12th day that he was overdue, I
Yeah.
went in, and the obstetrician said, we want to send you to be induced right now. And using my hypnobirthing knowledge, I started asking, those questions like, why, what's the medical reason? Everything's looking fine, is it not? And I said, no, I'm not going to be induced. And she was quite affronted by this and told me, so can you confirm that you are refusing my medical advice? And I had to say, yes, I am.
Yeah.
And I was like terrified as those words came out my mouth, because she was sort of standing over me. And you do feel in those kind of moments that, who am I to refuse an obstetrician's advice?
Yeah.
She knows what she's talking about. But because I think, I had been so engrossed in the hypnobirthing world, and I knew that if I went onto the ward to be induced, I might be there for another day or two anyway
Yeah.
before they'd even be able to take me to the labour ward. So I was pretty convinced that if the baby was healthy,
Yeah.
I was better off at home. But it was a really tough moment, and it was quite a standoffish moment between me.
Yeah, you feel a bit naughty, don't you? You feel like a naughty school child that's like doing
Yeah.
something a bit wrong because they're seen
Mm,
as a figure of authority, even though they're not. But I
yeah.
think we see them as that.
Yeah.
So, but you asked all the right questions, and actually her answers didn't give you any reason to
Mm,
go ahead and do that. Her answers were like, yeah, baby's fine, like you're
yeah.
fine. What you can't, that's not enough of a reason, just that you're 12 days over. I mean, yeah, you did
Yeah.
the right thing, absolutely. But it can feel really difficult to do that.
Yeah, and it's crazy that it can feel so scary to advocate for yourself at the
Yeah.
most important times in your life, and that in society we are taught to defer to professionals and experts. But your experience better than
Mm.
anyone, and I'd already had a positive home birth. No complications in my second pregnancy, and I was absorbing all of that information and sort of trying to think about what to say. And I thought, at least if I said no and then came back an hour later and said I want to be induced, they would take me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the conclusion I came to, and thank goodness. It was fine, because that night I put my daughter to bed, and I could just tell as I was reading her story, it's like really kicking off. I think you need
Wow.
to go to bed now, darling. And actually, that was because the obstetrician, I had refused sweeps up until that point. And she said to me, if you're not
Yeah.
going to come in, do you want to have a sweep? And I was like, fine, whatever. She was like,
Yeah.
I've given you a really good one. that baby's coming. So in the end, she sort of got on my side, and she
Good.
gave that to me. She was like, that's going to work. So yeah, then it did all kick off that night, whether because of the sweep or not, I don't know. But from putting my daughter to bed at about 8 p.m., Wilf was born at 11:23. So
Wow.
3 hours and 20 minutes from literally zero to having a baby in my arms. I don't think
Oh
we
my
were
goodness.
time to even go to hospital in that scenario, because my husband kept, again, my birth routine was, as soon as it kicks off, get in the shower, just get that warm water down my back, and breathe, and just like get into the world and my world of birthing. And my husband kept coming and going, shall I call the midwife? And I'm going, no, fine, it's fine. And by this point, this app had been released to help you time your contractions.
Yeah.
And he looked at the app And he was like, they're like less than 2 minutes apart.
Oh my God.
I was so thinking we were in for a really long one because of what happened with my daughter.
Yeah.
The baby wouldn't be coming until 6, 7 o'clock the next morning. So I was like, no, there's no point calling him now. Anyway, the midwife, my husband managed to get me into the pool, which wasn't even fully filled. I was like, I need to push. And within like a few minutes of me getting into the pool, the midwife arrived. And then
Oh,
about
good.
20 minutes later, the baby arrived. And I think it was like 3 pushes at that point. Like my body knew what it was doing the second round. And it was just like it tunneled his way out very quickly. And we were all just so shocked because your expectation was, well, once again, baby won't be coming till morning, but also we might end up having a transfer to hospital. So just the fact that it all suddenly had a baby in my arms was just like, whoa, we did it again. Have we really done a second home birth? It was amazing. So 2 very different births, and yeah, totally wouldn't have been able to. I mean, because I guess, is it a bigger risk or not? I'm not sure, but to do that way, I think you really do need to be very well. I believe from my background as a climber, at least, like you should prepare as much as you can. If you want the best chance of achieving the outcome that you want, do as much as you can. Go listen to all the podcasts, do all the breath work, practice, everything like that. It was a lot harder for my second, but I did as much as I could. And I'm, we're so lucky that preparation met good conditions and things went to plan. And then we got, the birth that we wanted. So it was lovely. And there's nothing better.
It's true though, because you don't just anything you're good at in life. So like, obviously like mountaineering, but also things like people who play the piano or people who play a particular sport, like anything you're really good at, you know a lot about it to start, you know a lot, you know your subject, but you also do it a lot. So you're good at it and you're practiced at it. And it's kind of the same at birth, that you can't physically obviously practice the birth part, but the breathing and the relaxation techniques and things like that, you can practice those, and you can educate yourself as much as you can possibly do about it, which gives you as much as you can get, like in terms of control and comfort levels over that, because obviously you can't actually control your birth. You can't, say this is how it's going to go.
Exactly. It is the complete unknown. There's so much out of your control. And so you have to be very sort of sanguine about that fact. With the best, your will to have a great birth, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, things for whatever reason don't always go to plan. And that is mountaineering in its essence. It's the unknown. And it's sometimes, there's so much uncertainty. There's avalanches, there's rockfall, there's so much we can't control, the weather. So I think having that mindset, as I said to you at the beginning, of strong goals, loosely held.
I like that.
Do prepare as much as you can, so that if that moment arrives when things are going well, you've got the best chance to take like that opportunity. And I did speak to obviously many other pregnant women when I was pregnant and stuff, and you meet them and what kind of birth are you planning, and there was a lot of, I'm just going to hospital, I'm just let the midwives do it, I'm not, I don't want to know anything. I'm like, okay, they know that if that works for you, brilliant. But for me, I felt like I needed to know. In the mountains, you want to know everything that can go wrong, everything that can go right. And it was the same with birth. I just needed to know everything that I could. Obviously I was never going to be at the level of a midwife or anything like that, but for the information,
you don't need to be. But also like the people who say, I'm just going to like wing it, that very occasionally, obviously, for those people, there will be the odd birth every now and again where it does work out, because that's obviously just life. But in most scenarios, it's probably not going to go how you want it to go if you're not prepared. And it's the same, I guess, you probably could have somebody climb a mountain that's done absolutely no prep, and every once in a while they might actually just achieve it, but it's a complete fluke, and you're much better off preparing for all eventualities and being aware of what could happen, what could not happen, what you would do in those situations if they did happen. So yeah, it's all, and people listening to this, like they're preparing. So they are the people who are making that choice to prepare, which is great. But yeah, it's the majority of people still don't, they still bury their head in the sand, I think, a little bit about birth, which is such a shame.
Well, again, because the rhetoric is that it's dangerous and you need to be in hospital, you need to have midwives around you,
Yeah.
and that's the best place for you. And I think if you're not willing for whatever reason to get yourself into that space, that headspace of wanting to, take control. I mean, doing inverted commas for those that are listening, to take control of your
Yeah.
birth, and that probably is the best place for you, rather than to wing it at home, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think a lot of the hypnobirthing journey that so many of us go on is actually unlearning this idea that hospital is the safest place for you, and actually connecting with something that, hang on a minute, our ancestors, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers didn't, they just went and they weren't doing hypnobirthing courses,
No, they weren't.
they weren't listening to podcasts, they didn't have apps, or birthing pools, but they gave birth because they had a lot of community knowledge, and it would have been something, that the midwives and women in the community that had given birth would support those women. And
Yeah.
now it's sort of changed to becoming this thing that happens in hospital, and that we don't really, if you've had a bad experience, you don't really want to share it with other people. So it's hard, we've lost that understanding that birth is a human thing. And I think that was the best thing about hypnobirthing for me, was like unraveling it and coming back to the fact that, oh, this is in me. I just need
Yeah.
to create the conditions that this can happen in the most, just let my body do its thing. And that was such a beautiful thing, to see your body do something that you've never done before. And
Yeah.
it's just incredible, isn't it?
That's it. You did that perfectly, created the complete right conditions for yourself. And that gives you the best shot that you have at doing it the way you want. And obviously, like if there's a curveball thrown in somewhere, then you deal with that at the time. But the most you can do, yeah, is just create the environment that for you feels safe,
Yes.
and feels comfortable and you feel happy in, and your body's going to respond in the best way in that scenario. So both births, which one would you say you found easier? Because I've also had a long birth and I've had a short birth like you as well. And the short, I'd still always pick the shorter birth because it's done quicker, but it is a lot more intense because obviously your body's doing the same amount of work, but in a much smaller time. So how about you? What would you go for?
Yeah, I did feel a bit shortchanged actually with the short one, because my
Yeah.
neighbour also had like 4 home births, and she was like, "Oh, it's great. When the contractions start, you get to leave the kids with your husband and go and watch Netflix,
Oh
all
man.
like, whilst it's all building up." And I was like, "Yeah, I can't wait for that. Like, I'll just have some time just for me whilst the contractions."
Yeah.
Like, no, there was none of that. But I think my first birth, because my body was having these false labors all night for like 2 nights before the actual one, I was just delirious. And
Yes.
so that was quite tough. And there's so much about birth where you read about it, you listen to stuff about it, and then your experience is completely unique, and you think,
Yeah.
no one else talked about it being this way. So yeah, that was definitely like what I felt with my first one. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
What am I doing that like for 3 days? Like, what's happening?
It's funny, every single birth is so different. And I feel like when you've been through it, it's so hard then to explain it to people because you can't, your body almost forgets in a way of like how it felt properly to be able to explain it to somebody. But you also can't really explain it to somebody because you don't want to scare anybody in like how you felt. So yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? That, and obviously everybody experiences those contractions in such a
Mm,
different way. And I've definitely had clients of mine who have literally like not made a noise. They've just been so calm, and then the baby's just like popped out, which is not the norm for anyone
yeah,
listening. That's not the typical. But then yeah, I've had others who are much more vocal and much more, I can't do it, I can't do it, and it just really like goes both ways, and it's just how you experience it.
yeah.
So yeah,
No,
amazing.
it is. Oh, my friends did not hold back from telling me about their birth story, all in all their glory. And that part of the hypnobirthing thing can be, maybe don't listen to those kind of negative stories if you can avoid it. Didn't have that opportunity with my friends, no way. A few glasses.
No.
It
Yeah.
was, but again, going back to my mountaineering background, if we're trying to climb a mountain, we do look at what's happened previously to people, because
Of course.
you can say, well, we that sounds like it didn't work out very well. I'm going to try my best not to make that,
Yeah.
not to go down that direction, or not. Maybe if you just made a different decision at that point. So actually, the negative birth, not negative birth stories, but those ones that were a
Mm.
bit more challenging to hear, I think again
Yeah.
they had their own place. It's birth after all, and
Yeah.
just wishing it to be perfect isn't gonna. Yeah, so I didn't kind of give them any any,
No.
but yeah, trying to like shake my positive mindset I was trying to go into it with. But yeah, no, it was great. And now obviously when you have had two great births, people are just so shocked to hear that. They're like, what do you mean
Yeah.
you enjoyed giving birth? I'm like, yeah, those best experiences of my life, like the most proud. I mean, I've climbed some of the world's highest mountains, but giving birth was my biggest achievement. And people are like, but it's horrible, it's awful. And you just realize, the hypnobirthing community is still quite niche,
Yeah.
when you
It
go out
is.
to the real world.
It is. I feel like because I spend my whole life talking about it and talking to people like yourself about it, I feel like surely everybody does it. But then when you actually go outside, when I go outside of my little bubble and I
Yeah,
speak to regular people, yeah, most people still have no idea what it is. They still don't trust it. They still put all their trust in the maternity system. And you realize, yeah, that it's actually really tiny and there's actually not that many of us. But it's nice to, and I've said this before in here, but it's so nice, like you doing what you did unknowingly may have inspired some other people in your circle or your family who may have never considered a home birth, but because you went and did it, it's now changed what they might do, and then they might inspire one other person. So it's all those tiny little
yeah,
differences. We might not be able to make a really big scale difference to how
yeah.
people view birth, which is a shame, but we can do it on like really tiny little level, to other people. And I like that. I like that each one of us who does that inspires like even just one person. It's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially, yeah, I certainly felt like in the community that I grew up in, the idea of having a home birth was, as my mum's reaction was like, are you mad? Like, this is not.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely, it's just nice to, yeah, like maybe, yeah, encourage a different narrative about women and what we're capable of, and
Mm.
like how amazing and beautiful birth can be. So yeah, I hope, I don't know if I have or haven't inspired anyone else, but I've certainly,
You will have.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
had like, other pregnant women in our family, like my
Yeah.
brother's wives, and I'm going, "Well, are you going to do some?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, no, not really." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I would just leave it there, because you don't want to be that annoying person either. That's like,
No.
you should give birth like I did. You just have to let people do their thing.
It might be because you've scaled Everest, they might be like, well, she's a little bit different from most people because she's done that. So maybe we don't totally trust her when it comes to that because they probably think you're like this real risk taker. Whereas actually so many of us give birth at home and don't take other types of risks.
Totally, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. You don't, yeah, and I think that's a really important point, is you don't have to be anything like an athlete or a super
No.
fit person. I've had friends that have had home births that had quite bad, like pelvic girdle, what's it called?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, perfect girdle.
Didn't really walk or do anything for months, but still had really fantastic births. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, what worked for me was just feeling like I was prepared. And I think all of that stuff
Yeah.
kind of helps you get in that zone. But whether the physical, stretching and like walking had an impact on the birth, I don't know. Probably just, being healthy just makes you feel good when you're in that stage. So yeah, no, not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, it probably just keeps you a little bit more active, a little bit longer, which maybe helps a bit with baby position and things like that. But no, like absolutely, home birth is for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, oh, but thank you. That was like so interesting, and I've loved chatting to you just because it's so interesting your background and relating it back to birth. Like obviously so extreme what you've done, and to relate that back and compare it to birth is just really fascinating for me, who's also given birth twice, but I'm sure for other people as well. So it's yeah, it's so great. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
You. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You're so welcome. Thank you.